All right, so this is kind of explaining the laptop a little bit. So this is a project I've been wanting to do since I was like 13. My original idea was to not even portabilize a mini PC. It was literally to just grab a desktop and shove it in a suitcase and add like an HDMI screen and connect that power wise. Um, well, first of all, this suitcase is like this is already a pretty thick laptop. When it's closed, it goes up to well here, and yeah, it was just gonna be way too big. It would have been like triple the size of this thing, um, which would be awesome. If it wasn't for the fact that it just wouldn't be portable or as portable as I would need it to be too heavy. This thing actually surprisingly only weighs about like 7-ish pounds, maybe a little bit less, so it's not that hard to carry around. But the idea behind this was to get as close as I could to making my own portable computer. Um, and again, there's been a lot of videos doing the whole briefcase and desktop PC with a monitor inside of it and keyboard and mouse. It's been done a few times already. Not a few. It's actually been done several times. Uh, but when I got my hands on the original computer, which is a Tandy 200 laptop portable computer, it was my grandpa's and he had given it to me, and all I saw was potential with this, so I wanted to see if I could make an actual computer system fit in here along with a battery. And unfortunately right now it doesn't have a battery. uh, there is a way to do it, I just haven't figured out the BMS board to lithium battery configuration. uh, but yeah, there was a lot of weird trials to deal with on this thing. It's definitely one of the easier projects I've done, but there was definitely a lot of trials to deal with. Um, so as you can see, the screen when it's on sleep mode, which is what it's at right now, says no signal and has that colored barcode. And if you didn't notice in the last video, it very much looks like a CRT TV. And you might not be able to see it here. Actually, let me unfold that to get better quality. But you can see those waves in there, and yeah, it almost looks like a CRT TV, and that's because in a way it sort of is. It's using composite video, uh, which you're probably wondering how I got that. Some of you have probably already guessed, and yeah, it's an HDMI to composite video converter, and that's what I ended up using. Now, what's great about the one that I got is that one, it was cheap, but two, it displays good enough quality that you can still tell what everything is. You can still read some of the text, like right here, Fallout Shelter. Um, but what's also great about it is that it doesn't really use extra power like you'd think it would. So there's enough power being delivered from the video signal, the HDMI, and USB-C, which I actually had to use the USB-C to HDMI converter in here as well, so it's got two different converters running. But yeah, that's what I had to use to get power and video to it. And luckily, you don't need an external 5-volt source. It just runs even under high capacity. Not high capacity. Well, yeah, high capacity, as in like the kind of programs you'd be running on here, like video editing, 3D modeling, gaming. But yeah, so you don't need extra power. It's already coming from the USB-C port. And yeah, and then I have my 5-volt 3 watt amp. Oh my gosh, 3-watt speaker system, which was relatively cheap, and that's running off of a USB hub, and the USB hub is connected to the computer. So I have two different USB hubs in here, all supporting 4 ports. One of them is solely being used for power to different systems, like the the amp in here, and the other is going to like let me think. I can't remember. I'm a little bit tired right now. It's been a long day. uh Basically, it's going to the monitor well, it should have been going to the converter, but I stopped using that. It's delivering power to the microphone, the speakers, and something else in here. I can't remember what it was. Thing is, it hasn't even been a few days. I should already know all this. And then the other one is solely being used for data. So even though power is coming from the other USB hub, which it's only a power USB hub, it's not really meant for data. The other one is, and I'm using the data signal off of that for the keyboard, the mouse, these guys, oh my gosh, the microphone. And yeah, and the laptop screen is running off of 12 volts currently, but it's only 1 amp draw. So even though it's higher voltage, it doesn't use a whole lot of power, basically. So I got that, and the way I did this keyboard is, instead of using an Arduino to interpret each individual key, what I did was I basically scratched off all the traces connecting each key to the other on the original board. And what I did was grab another USB keyboard and map it out based off of the way those keys were set up, and I hardwired each key to the corresponding pin. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. If anything, it's more time consuming. It's not really that complicated. Almost anybody could do it. So yeah, there's that. And let's see. Not all the ports are being used up. There's actually a lot of blank holes in here, and that's because I didn't have enough money to get more USB hubs. So even in the back, there's a giant gap and stuff, and I was planning on using that for another video source, but it's already got basically 3 video ports in it, so it's not really necessary, but it could use more USB ports and maybe some SD card hubs and everything, or SD card slots. But yeah, so the system itself is pretty simple. It's not too complicated. I mean, really, it's basically just taking out the USB ports and from the hubs and the components and wiring them to the board. But yeah, it's not a very complicated system. So we got that. The case was, I basically took the original case and redesigned it in a 3D program. I didn't have a 3D scanner, so I can't scan everything, and even if I did, it wouldn't be super accurate. So it's just easier to measure and kind of come up with this. Originally, in the front, there was supposed to be a headphone jack, USB port, and then SD card readers and everything. And the speakers were going to go up on here, but the reason I didn't do that is because originally I was going to use the glass that already came on this thing, and I built a bezel for the screen that was working, and it was an HDMI screen. It was much higher quality, but it just didn't end up working out because the screen ended up dying on me after a few days. And to be fair, I kept it in a box for like over a year with no like cover or anything. It was just completely exposed. So I had to switch over to this screen, some janky Chinese product, but it ended up working out, and I actually think it looks cooler with the CRT look to it. It's great for playing games. Video editing, it's going to be a little bit harder because, one, it's not a very huge screen, and two, you know, you're looking at your cursor and stuff, and that's pretty much all you can see in there. But yeah, you can hook it up to another screen, video edit off of that, and 3D modeling and stuff. But that's solely what this is good for, is videos and gaming. And the trackpad itself, I couldn't put it on top of here because I would have just extended everything out further. I didn't want to mess too much with the actual case. All I wanted to do at most was, you know, create this bezel, create an access panel, and yeah, just create better screw ports and a few other things here and there. So my idea or solution to that was to create a keypad track that slides out from the bottom by grabbing this little lip and went back to sleep and grabbing that, and when you pull it out completely, it the actual pull-out tab rests down, and at an angle, you get that, which actually makes it a little bit more comfortable for operating this entire computer. But yeah, and then once you're done, slides back in. And for this, all I did was make a little simple track and stuff, and this slides on, and really the tensioner is the actual wire in the back, and that's what stops it from going any further. But the downside of that is that it also acts as a spring, so this is always going to push out a little bit. Hoping at some point in the future I can, if you can see that, make this lip maybe a little bit thinner inward, but still able to grab it like that. So yeah, that's what I got right there. Got the laptop, and this is actually, the keyboard, and this is actually the original LED that came with the system. I tested it just to see if it would even work, and surprisingly works somehow. The only functions that the only original functions that I'm really missing is that I had to take out the original power button, because for some reason this computer relies on a tactile switch to power it, which, as you know, is just 2 pins being connected for a split second and then let go. But apparently the laptop did not seem to like that with the original power switch, even though it was basically the same thing. Not sure why, but just didn't seem to like it. And caps lock I am missing, because the original keyboard used a temporary switch like you would with shift for caps lock. So caps lock on this one holds down. Now you could say that, oh well, why not just do that? And I've tried that already, does not seem to work. So that's the only function that I'm going to be missing, that I actually use a lot in my other keyboards and everything else. But yeah, that's the laptop. It's a pretty thick guy, especially when you close it up. Oh, and it's got the magnets for the screen, which don't seem to work too well, but you got that. You got air vent 1 over here, air vent 2 over here, if you can see that. And then, if I can show the bottom, air vent 3, which is for the main computer. Oh, another thing. So I couldn't find the right size grip pads, if you will, for the laptop. So what I ended up doing is just 3D printing some rings and then filling each one just slightly over the ring itself with hot glue and letting it dry, and it created this uniform grip, and it actually works really, really well. So yeah, that's the laptop. It's nothing crazy to write home about. There's definitely a lot of improvements I want to make, like changing it to where the speakers are up here for better audio quality. Microphone, I actually like where it is right now, and it makes it easier to replace it too once it does go bad. I definitely will be removing the speakers and creating more ports, and adding the battery system, of course, and maybe changing this out with a more tactile gummy switch. Even though this is all mechanical, I doubt there's a mechanical switch out there that, well, I mean, aside from these, but I don't think the keyboard motherboard is gonna be able to actually process that for caps lock. So that's that. And yeah, that's the laptop.